Hello everybody. Today I'm going to talk about our latest project, which is still in progress, called the Type Specimen Poster. And most of you have made a start at this. We started this before we had to leave the campus, and since we have to finish it on our own, I thought I would share with you some of my thoughts and tips and tricks on how to make this process work. Now remember, when we started this process, we started with a grid background. You can see the grid here in these pale blue lines. And to see this, you have to have the screen in preview mode, or non-preview mode, excuse me, because preview mode shows you what it looks like when it's printed, and of course the guides do not print. So you can do this by hitting the W key. It's best to put your black cursor, the top cursor or the tool on the top of the toolbar, out in the pasteboard so that you're making sure you're not typing a W in any of your text box. So here we can see the grid in the background. Now the purpose of the grid, as mentioned in class, is to give you a skeletal structure on which to build your design. You don't have to be really strict with it. Like if you think of a newspaper, for example, you can see the columns in a newspaper clearly. And so a newspaper is made to fit that column structure with almost a rigid discipline. But we don't need to follow this that rigidly. However, what I see when I open this up, and this is Maddie Truebloods, who's kindly given me permission to show you what I'm seeing here, is that she has a grid in the background, but she hasn't been using the grid at all. And this happens a lot because in class I show you how to set up a grid and everybody follows what I'm doing. And then they just go their own way and design as though the grid is not there. Because what most beginners do is they design in this view. And so you can't even see the grid. So that's not a good way to do it. It's better to get used to seeing it in this mode so that you can see all of the grid lines and use them to help build your design. Now, if as you build your design, the grid is not working for you, then you can simply change the grid. And this is good because if you have to add other elements or take elements away, they will align properly as they should, and it makes a big difference with your design. So I'm going to do that here in a minute, but the first thing I wanted to show you, and the first thing that struck me about this particular design, is the G, the big G on the edge of the paper. It's on the right-hand edge. It's going off the edge of the paper. Now the problem I have with this is that the G is like some other letters. It has a face to it. As a matter of fact, in the terminology, we refer to this as a beard. And so you can think of the G as having a face. And if you think of it as having a face, which way is it facing? It's facing to the right, away from all the other important information. Not only is it facing to the right, but it says, here, come with me off the page. It's leading the eye off the page. So I suggested this to Maddie when we were in class, and she does have some other examples here with the G in a different position, and I'll get to those in a minute. So let's go back and look at this with the guides. So you can see, if I zoom in here, you can see that it doesn't conform to the grid at all. All of the elements that are on this page are simply floating around. They do not adhere to the grid. It's as though the grid was not there. The other thing I noticed is that there is a very narrow margin on this page. And if we go up to the layout menu and choose margins and guides, you can see that the margin is set at 0.125 IN. That's an eighth of an inch, and that's too narrow a margin. Because if this gets trimmed, the chances are very good that anything that's that close to the edge of the paper may get cut off. You remember from the business card project how easy it is to make a false cut. So you want to make sure that all of your live elements, all of the elements that are important to the design, are well away from the edge of the paper. So the first thing I'm going to do is change that. I'm going to go to Margins and Columns. And normally when you open an InDesign file, you'll see that your margin is usually set at 0.5 inches all the way around. And of course you don't have to conform to that. And sometimes it's best not to. But you should at least have 1/4 of an inch all the way around. So I'm going to change this to 0.25 and hit the Tab key. And because this little chain here is locked and it's not unbroken, or not broken, I'm sorry. When you hit the Tab key, the 0.25 populates all of these other boxes. Now the columns, it's fine to have one column. We're going to mess with that here in just in a minute. So I'm going to click OK. And now I can see the margin is now 1/4 of an inch.